All right, page 2 of the 1.4 notes. We're still working with reflections as well as some shifting and some domain and range stuff too. All right, so to start off, they gave us a function f of x. Now, they didn't give us the equation. They just said, hey, we have some function called f of x, and then here's its kind of funky graph. Okay. First, they want us to find the domain and range of that, and then we're going to start shifting and reflecting this function over here. Okay, so what is the domain of our function here? In fact, it might help us to write the points down that are labeled here. We got a few key points here. So let's see, we got -5, comma, -3. -2, comma, 0. 0, comma, -2. 2, comma, -4. And 3, -3. Okay, because those are the points that we're going to be, moving around a lot once we start shifting and reflecting. But first, what is our domain? So let's see, we want to write this in interval notation. So we want to go from our smallest x value to our biggest x value. Our smallest x value is here at -5. And then since that's a closed circle, yes, we are including -5, so we want brackets. And it goes from -5 with no holes in the graph all the way to +3. And then, yeah, another solid circle, so we are including 3. And then the range, we want to go from the lowest y value to the highest y value. My lowest y value is at -4. And yes, y can be -4, so then it's going from -4 up to the highest y value is 0. All right, so then there's the domain and range. And we're going to make some comparisons to the domain and range of these other graphs at the end of the notes once we finish these other graphs. All right, try to zoom in a little bit more. All right, so for the first example, they want us to take our original function, which is this weird drawing here, and we want to shift it. And what does this tell us to do? Where are we going to shift this thing? Well, right 3 and up 4. So then I just want to take each point, move it right 3 and up 4, which is like adding 3 to the x values and adding 4 to the y values. So adding 3 here, we get -2. Adding 4 here, we get +1. So that's going to be shifted up to here. Okay. Another thing you can do is just kind of count it out. Right 3, up 4, and then where's that point at, and put it down here. Right 3, up 4 is going to put us at 1, comma 4. Right 3, up 4 is going to put us at 3, comma 2. This one down here, right 3, up 4, it's going to put us at 5, comma 0. And then finally, and another way to do it is just say, okay, this last point, it's up 1 over 1 from that one, up 1 over 1 from that one. Or you can take this, move it right 3, up 4, 6, comma 1, which is where we're at. So it doesn't matter how you get those points there, but basically we just want to shift them all right 3 and up 4 from where they were originally on that graph. Okay? And then next, when we draw the graph, just try to make it look like that one up there. The first 2 dots are connected by a straight line. Next, we got a little kind of half circle swooping down there, and then straight line, straight line. So then there is our new function after we shift it right 3 and up 4. And maybe something we should have done ahead of time, we could have said how we're shifting it. Shifting it right 3, up 4. Okay? And then there's our graph. What is the domain and range of this graph? We'll do these kind of quickly and we'll revisit them at the end. The domain goes from -2 to +6. Brackets around both. The range goes from 0 to 4. Okay. In fact, let's just talk about this now. We went right 3 and up 4. How did the domain and range change? Well, the domain, since we went right 3, it's just like adding 3 to my x values. -5 plus 3 is -2. 3 plus 3 is 6. So we added 3 to the domain, basically, to the x's. And then for my range, well, here I went up 4. That's just going to add 4 to these 2 values. If I add 4 to those 2 values, I get 0 and 4. So when we shift our graph around, it's going to change the domain and the range depending on how much we're adding or subtracting to our x's and our y's. Okay. Example number 2, negative f of x. In other words, we want to take the opposite of all of these y values. So instead of 5, negative 3, we want that to be at 5. I'm sorry, negative 5, negative 3. That's going to be negative 5, positive 3. Negative 2, 0 is still at negative 2, 0 because the opposite of 0 is still just 0. 0, negative 2 is going to flip up to the 0, positive 2. 2, negative 4 is going to become 2, positive 4. And then 3, negative 3 is going to be 3, positive 3. Okay. And then we want to connect the first two straight line. The second two, we're going to have a circle that this time is going to curve, a half circle I should say, it's going to curve up, well, a quarter circle I guess. And then straight line and straight line. Okay, and then there is the opposite of our function. Okay, in other words, negative f of x, which is just a reflection over the x-axis as we saw on the first page. Okay, what's the domain and range of these things? So the domain goes from negative 5 to positive 3. The range goes from 0 to 4. All right, so let's see. What happened to the domain? Well, nothing, because all we did was take the opposite of our y values. We didn't change our x values at all. So if it's just a reflection over the x-axis, the domain stays the same. And what happened to our range? Well, these numbers, they kind of flipped, right? It went from negative 4, 0 to 0, 4. So they kind of switched places and did the opposite of each other. Okay? Of course, the opposite of 0 is still 0, so that's a little bit of a tricky part there. Okay? But you can see there's a relationship between the domain and range. You do not need to memorize the relationships for these things. It's just kind of neat to point out. All right, and then last two. Here, first of all, let's see. What are we going to do here? We're going to shift left 2 and down 1. So left 2, down 1. Okay? All right, and then so we're going to take each of those points, which I don't want to keep going back and forth, so please reference up at the top of your page. Hopefully you have those written down. The left 2 and down 1 is going to put us at negative 7, negative 4 for our first point. Negative 4, negative 1. Was it left 2 down 1? So negative 2, negative 3. Zero, negative 5. And 1, negative 4. Okay, and then we just want to connect the dots. First two have a straight line. Second, we got that little quarter circle, and then straight line, straight line. All right, so then here's our graph f of x shifted left 2 and down 1. What is the domain and range? Well, what do you expect the domain and range to be? Moving left 2, that should subtract 2 from my two domain values. So I should be subtracting 2 from here, so it should be maybe negative 7 and 2. And then down 1 is probably going to subtract 1 from each of these. Let's see if that's correct. So my domain goes from negative 7 to positive 1. So yeah, that's just like we thought. And then my range goes from my lowest value, negative 5, up to negative 1. Again, it's always smallest to biggest. And then that is just subtracting 1 from my original range values. Okay. All right, last one. All right, f of negative x. So then we want to take the opposite of all of our x values. So our first point up there was negative 5, negative 3. We want to make that positive 5, negative 3. Next, negative 2, 0 is going to become positive 2, 0. 0, negative 2 is still 0, negative 2. 2, negative 4 is going to be negative 2, negative 4. And 3, negative 3 is going to be negative 3, negative 3. Okay. All right, so this thing's kind of flipped around. So then this is kind of the starting point. We want the straight line here, curved part there, straight line, straight line. So just real quick, get our sketch. And now we can see the domain and range. So what's our domain and range going to be? And again, don't stress too hard on trying to figure it out before. Just look at your graph. That's the easiest way. Our domain goes from negative 3 to positive 5. And our range goes from negative 4 to 0. Okay, and if you compare that to the original domain and range at the top, you can see the range didn't change because all we did was take the opposite of our x's. We didn't change our y's. And then instead of negative 5, comma 3, now it's negative 3, comma 5. So again, those values kind of just switch places there. Okay. So again, don't worry about memorizing how the domain is going to change. Just do the drawing and then look at the domain and range from the graph. That's probably the easiest way, but it's nice to see those relationships. And that wraps up these notes.